welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Welcome to Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast. I am Jessica, and I'm welcoming back one of our favorites. Hi, Josh Malerman. How are you?
Hello. It is awesome to see you, to hear you, to be here.
It is awesome to see you, to have you here. And as I was saying before, when we were just chatting before I started recording, literally everything you write, every time I see an announcement that you're coming out with something new, I'm on top of it, and I'm like, yes, I would love to talk to him about it. I don't even have to know what the plot is. I know I'm going to love it. And Incidents Around the House was wonderful. So this one is different. This one has a child's voice, and it is it's very much it's like a haunted family almost, but it's told through the eyes of a child. And I think, you know what, I'm going to ask you first before I start gushing about it, where this story came from, and we could go from there.
Well, it almost sounds like too on point where it came from, but bear with me. About 13 years ago, my younger brother, Ryan, told me that him and his wife, Alyssa, were putting their kid, Elliot, to bed for the night. And Elliot said goodnight. Ryan and Alyssa said goodnight. And then Elliot said goodnight again in a way that sounded a little different. And they were like, you already said goodnight. And Elliot said, oh, I was saying goodnight to other mommy. And I was like, whoa, man, Ryan, like, you left the house, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what hotel did you stay in, Like, and he was like, no, kids say stuff, I'm like, no. If I had a kid, like a 5-year-old, I think Elliot was 5. If I had a 5-year-old, a 4-year-old that was like, I'm saying goodnight to other mommy. And then there was another story about how their other kid was kind of like blushing, like looking at the corner of the bedroom, like blushing as though like seeing someone else. And I was like, no. You got, So for 13 years, I don't know if I'm like, it's been sort of a joke almost with Ryan and I. Like, I'd be like, like, what's in the basement? Or have you seen other mommy? Or, this kind of thing. And then not long ago, a couple years ago, Allison and I returned home from our cat passed away, and we were both like seriously like emotional about it. We come home, Allison starts painting a mural of Frankie on the hall wall out here, and I just wrote the outline for Incidents Around the House on the office wall, just out of nowhere. I'm like, all right, here we go. And so it's almost too on point where the story came from, but how it developed, obviously, that's a whole different thing.
So as I sort of hinted at before, it's told from the point of view of Bela, who is the child. But there's so much subtext as to what's like going on in Bela's family that, that part unfolds along with what is the story of an entity that is really terrorizing this family. Was it like, how did that part develop? So yeah, let's talk about the development of it.
Okay. So I had like two sort of rules on and they're still written on the wall on the other side of this computer. The first one is at the time she was 5 in the outline, but in the book she's 8. But it says, can a 5-year-old narrate an entire novel without him or her being unreliable? In other words, can we do this without us not believing her? Like, I want us to believe every word she says. The second sort of like rule in the book was that mommy and daddo would react to the thing in the house. I don't want to say in a real way, but like how we would react, which is we would have no idea what to do about that. We would have no idea. And then oftentimes in a horror story, it's like, if there's a child involved, this or that happens, and the parent has to come up with something to do, right? Or protect the kid in some way. And maybe, somebody can help. It was like a pillar of this book that mommy and daddo can't help. The church can't help. Like, religion can't help. Ghost hunter can't help. An occultist, friend, acquaintance, grandma, nobody can help. And that's, while I don't look for realism at all in writing in what turns me on about art, for some reason, I wanted them to react realistically to this thing and this unrealistic thing in the house. And so from there, that's where it started to develop that not only are they reacting in what I thought would be a real way, but their relationship was also a little more realistic to me in that I don't even know if I would necessarily say that mommy and Dado have a bad relationship. I mean, Dado like loves her, that's for sure. Mommy obviously is in a weird place. There's no doubt about that. But I saw like a review that was like she sucks, you know. But there's a side of me that like I like maybe she's going through something, man. Maybe she's going through a weird period. Maybe she's going to be or would be an incredible mom if Bella was like 15 or 17 or even 30, you know, and maybe she's just not quite equipped for like the child mom, but maybe she will be. I don't know. I don't write her off. And so to me, Dado and Mommy, it's not just their reaction to other Mommy and what's happening, but their relationship too. That became for me, this is where your realism lies.
Yeah, and I could see a bit of that. I could understand, and I don't want to talk too much about why people might think that mommy sucks. She's going through stuff, yeah, for sure. And it's interesting that you make the comment that she might be amazing if Bella was at a different stage, because I don't think, one thing that a lot of people who have kids don't really take into consideration is the rapidness of change and the fact that you are supposed to be perfect at every stage. And that's just not possible. Not everybody is cut out for every stage or any of them. And that doesn't mean you don't love your child. It just means that, we're all kind of, if you want to say that we're all kind of ill-equipped to become parents, it's true, because this is another person you're dealing with. This is not a machine. This is not, and you're not going to get your nights laughing with Dado the same way you did before your child was born. And you're not going to, like, your connections with everybody are going to change. And sometimes that really knocks people on the head. So that is actually, that's very interesting. And yeah, there's definitely there's stuff going on between them, but they do care for each other, and they had, at one point, you could tell it was very solid. And this thing with Bella is terrifying to them. And I think, like, one thing that you do very well with her, observing them, is just her reactions to their emotions and how she could really see their raw emotions, not even just dealing with the other mommy situation, but also dealing with each other. I mean, children are so observant, which I guess is kind of bringing it to this whole thing. And maybe your nephew, was it, that, children, it's almost like they exist on another plane. It's like they see things and react to things. And I think a lot of parents will just be like, oh, whatever, no big deal. Kids just say funny things. But what if it's not just a kid saying a funny thing?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And the moment and this is something I've only talked to like two other people about this book so far. So I feel like I'm just learning how to talk about it. And one of the things I'm discovering is that it's hard to talk about this book without spoiling stuff. And it's not like it's a twisting, turning tale. It's not like some mystery where things are unfolding, but there's something about it where anything you say feels like it's a bit of a reveal. And it's a strange thing. But I will say this because I don't know. I feel like why not? The book, again, just like I wanted Bella to be reliable, I didn't want to waste any or too much time at all on anybody not believing her, right? So what's one way to solve that? Well, that one way to solve that is for other people to see other mommy also. Okay. So for anyone listening, like, yeah, we're not wasting much time like, oh, it's your imagination, kid. No, not much of that. None of that. And that was a big thing for me because they can both see it, but Bella could see it in sort of a, what's the right word? with no reference point at all as a friend or as a potential friend or as something natural because she's a kid and it's been around pretty much her whole life, or at least her whole conscious, aware life that she knows of. Whereas when mommy sees other mommy, that's like a crack in reality. And so that, that balance too. So while Bella's never unreliable, she did welcome this thing into her life unknowingly. It's like, oh, like, oh, no, I guess this is part of being alive. Is this thing that's crawling on its belly out of the closet towards me? That's part of being alive. And then mommy and dad were like, oh my God. So yeah, that juggling act or whatever they're in, that was really exciting. I want to tell you something. So usually, as you know, when I write a novel, there'll be like a soundtrack on here. You can see the record player right there. And I sit down to work on this book and I tried like a number of like soundtracks, and one was too sweeping and one was too grandiose and one was too dramatic and one was too scary and one was it's like nothing. I couldn't find the mood. So finally I was like, hey man, have you ever tried just writing a book to silence? Just nothing. And so this experience was amazing. I was like in the office just with the computer light or the screen lit up, dark house at night, silent house. It was freaky. And at some point early on in writing the book, I started to feel this sort of like a cold wind blowing through the book. And I was telling myself, like, hey, like, whatever that is, do not close the window. Leave the window open in this book because I felt like I feel like you can feel that there's no music. This is a cold, scary book. And like that was completely intentional. And I feel like Bird Box is close to that too. It's different, but close to that. And there was something about Incidents Around the House where once I found that mood, I was like, do not leave this mood. Do not leave this mood. And that's where it stayed the whole time.
Yeah, because you're also a musician, right?
Yep.
Wow. So that really must have been just a big shift, but that's great that it really just got the voice and of the book flowing. And you're
Yeah.
right. This does have a similar tone in that way to Bird Box. And especially just thinking about all of your others. And it is very haunting. Silence is really scary.
Yeah, whereas like a book like Goblin, I was writing the colorful music, and Unbury Carol was
Yeah.
colorful music, and it was like sweeping and and that all makes sense. And even Daphne had like a dum 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 score to it or something. But now this one, was like, zoop.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, no, it was yeah, there was the kind of like that void. And you know what? I think it goes really well. And again, you are correct about like you can't really talk about this book without spoiling it. And it wasn't until you just said that where I was thinking to myself, this is why I'm talking around plot points and other stuff because I don't want to spoil it. But there is, something about the hopelessness of the fact that you did mention that they're constantly trying to get help and the help is just not it's just not there. It is that thing that you do really well where you take what one might call a trope and you turn it on its side into something different where like you watch something like with Poltergeist and it's like, well, we're going to get Tangina in and she'll fix everything, and yeah, no, she's just like, nope, sorry, this house,
right,
this
right,
other
right.
mommy situation, I'm gonna go back to dealing with the poltergeist. And
One of my
yeah.
favorite moments in movie history is in Paranormal Activity. Have you seen Paranormal Activity? Okay. When they invite like the psychic over and the psychic like enters the house and like this like they talk for like 10 seconds and the psychic's like, I'm sorry, I can't stay in this house and leaves. And you're like, oh my God, that is absolutely brilliant. Like that guy, that psychic, not only is that psychic legit, like so in tune that it was like, you know what? I'm out of here. I'm not staying. Sorry, guys. Good luck to you. And this isn't that, but that I wouldn't say it's turning a trope on its head, but that completely unexpected result in a horror story. If there was a way,
On the side, it turns it to the side, it pivots.
it does,
It,
it does. You're right,
yeah,
you're right.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think that incident has like a number of moments like that where it's like, oh, oh shit, what are they gonna do now? What?
Well, definitely. And it was very much, it lent itself to that silence and that sort of hopelessness. And
Yeah.
also just kind of, through the eyes of a child who are watching these adults who are supposed to be caring for you fix this problem, and the problem seems unfixable. And the collision with what this entity seems to want seems inevitable. And that's all I'm going to say about that, because I don't want to talk about that too much, because I want people to experience it because it is unsettling. But just this whole look like, okay, mommy and dad are going to fix this. Okay, now grandma's going to fix this. Okay, now grandma's friend is going to fix this. And is there a way to fix this? This just, we like, what's the next step? Is there a next step? And like for a kid whose life is really supposed to be built on hope for the future, that is very scary feeling, to be feeling that through Bella's eye, feeling it through Bella's body, basically.
Right, you're seeing she's witnessing each pillar of safety crumbling. Each pillar, which in a strange way
Absolutely.
is almost, it's almost like growing up or something. And she's only 8, but
Yeah.
in a sense, it's almost like growing up, right? Where you're like, oh, wait a minute, I got to do this myself. But not that she does anything herself. I'm just saying, you know, uh, because I'll say this, and I think this is fair to say without spoiling something, because the back of the book um says other mommy's question. So other mommy, every time she visits Bella, she asks the question, can I go into your heart? Can I go into your heart? And the longer it takes, Bella to answer, to give a satisfactory answer, the more impatient other mommy is getting, the bolder, the meaner. And that's where the book starts, listeners. That's where the book starts, is right about the time where other mommy's starting to get a little impatient with Bella. And so what I think happens here with this book is if you think of it in terms of a possession story, and typically what you have, and I'm not saying this is bad because these are some of my favorite stories ever. Typically, what you have though is a sort of safe, whatever, happy family. A character starts to act strange. Now we need to get this thing out of this character, right? We need to exorcise this demon. But that in between phase, that liminal space of when it goes from everything, it's not inside the character, to we have to get it out. This book, Incidents Around the House, feels to me like a magnifying glass up to the entity's attempt to get in. So the entire novel is an entity's attempt to get inside a character and to occupy that space. And that's, every day, can I go inside? Can I go into your heart? Can I go into your heart? Let me in, right? And when, again, I didn't like, that's not in, I don't think that's in the outline. That was something like discovered while writing, where it was like, hey, keep it here, keep the mood here, keep the moment here. This is the arc. The arc isn't what happens, like, it's almost uh like imagine that you had a book about someone that was deciding whether or not they should go do something bad, right? And then the book isn't about the bad thing they do. The book is about the decision to go do it. And so if you can maintain that decision making for 300 pages and end on, the character either goes to do the bad thing or not, that's super interesting to me, because we've seen the bad thing a million times. And it's not weird for weird's sake. It's fascinating. Let's put the magnifying glass up somewhere else. And I think that Incidents did that with this.
It did. And I will also say, I think making Bella 8 was a really good time to do this, because I mean, having my kids just turned 9, this really is, it's not really pre-adolescence, but it's not you're really much more aware of things that are on the horizon at this age. And you're watching things, you're starting to really take note of what people are doing, how they treat each other. You're starting to hear things in the news and question things. And at the same time, I mean, unfortunately, my kids experienced this, with both of my parents passing very shortly between each other. But you're really aware of death and aging. You are really aware of the fact that, okay, I am a child right now, but everybody goes in this direction. This is a direction, no matter what, there's something inevitable. And I think having her be 8 and experiencing this with all of those, metaphorical pillars coming down is a very good point for a child, because this is kind of when you're really aware of the things that could be unkind, and the fact that death is the end for pretty much everybody.
So do you find like more philosophical questions are being asked, even if it's not
Yes,
intentional? You do find that like in like recent year, like recent months, recent year?
100%, 100%. And I mean, I don't want to get too into it,
Yeah.
because we're dealing with some things, obviously. But yes, 100%, 100%. Well, what makes me me, what makes you you. um just really, like, they'll come up with things, and they're really mind bending questions.
Wow.
And yeah, and things that kids, you can't look at them in the same way anymore, because like, well, why is it that like, I see things through my eyes, and do you think that when somebody else is looking at the color blue, their blue looks different than my blue? Like, really, like, there's just so much more, and they have all these questions, and honestly, we do not have the answers for a lot of the things that they would like to know, because some of them are things that people have been hypothesizing for a while. So it really is that time between 8 and 9 really does seem to be this period of like pre-adolescence. There's definitely more awareness. There's awareness of a lot of things, and there's also awareness that your parents don't have all the answers.
Right, right. And that, wow, that's, see, I don't have kids, and so that is, I mean, this is really interesting. I could listen to you just talk about what you're talking about for the whole episode. I really could. It's super fascinating because it makes you start thinking too, okay, to relate it to the book, like in a way, it's almost like Bella's just being asked to change, right? In a weird way, other mommy, if you want to look at it in a metaphorical way, right? Which is, I have not done that yet. You can almost say, like, can I go into your heart? Is like, are you ready to change? And whether she is or not, listeners, hopefully you see in the book whether she is or not, and whether it's wise to change or not, whatever. But part of that is because she's starting to catch sort of glimpses, not just of an upside down face in the closet, but of mommy and daddo's relationship being a little odd, and like this being strange, and the church can't help us with this problem. And Grandma Ruth, who's like the rock, she seems scared. And there's a thing that Bella says a number of times I think 3 times in the book, where she says, Evelyn saw their mommy, Evelyn's different now. And it's like that. So there's like an awareness of like that a person can change. I don't know that a 5-year-old quite grasps that, but an 8-year-old is on the cusp is standing on the precipice, like looking into the like void of personality change and possibility, and what's good and what's bad and da da da. So I think for me, a sort of what's the right phrase? And also, I just wanted to thank you because this is again, this is all new to me talking about this, and this is very interesting. I'm gonna listen back to this, and I'll probably be like, no, Josh, that's not right. That's not right. But for me, a huge sort of outlet were the mini monologues of daddos and mommies too, but mostly daddos. Like on his thing about mindfulness, his thing about when he's talking about, we use the word scared for so many unrelated scenarios, but we make it sound like we feel the same in both scenarios. You're scared to take this test, but you're also scared of getting hit by a car when you're crossing the street. Like, aren't those two dramatically different things? Shouldn't you describe them with a different word? And if you don't describe them with a different word, you're almost in danger of telling yourself that you're scared of everything. That's when Bella's like, so are you saying that maybe I'm not scared? And then he's like, well, well, I wouldn't go that far, honey, but I'm just like, yeah, we're out of our minds scared, but it is an interesting thing. And again, that circles back to what you're saying about standing at that door of possibility, potential, self-discovery, that this is the moment you become more philosophical. This is the moment you start noticing your own personality and others.
Absolutely. Yeah, so one more thing I wanted to ask about is location, because this book is grounded, is it Chaps that it's kind of grounded in? And then,
Yeah.
but you take it toward a Malerman verse, you go to Samhattan, you go to Goblin, as they're trying to figure things out. Was that a bit different for you?
It was so fun. I was almost worried about it because, like I was telling you, leaving that window open and leaving the book cold, I was almost worried that having them go to Goblin was too warm of a thing. Because Goblin is a very colorful, even if it's crazy, and even if a lot of horrifying things happen there, it's still warm there to me. And I was worried about going, but I was like, okay, so then let's put it at the very outskirts of Goblin, like barely in the town limits, like let's just get as far out as we can go. And it was so fun because I'm starting to have what's the right phrase? Different stories will go to different places. Goblin's definitely the most unique in terms of it's got to be a real certain type of story to fully take place there. But Samhattan feels like a blank white, whereas Goblin is like an oil painting to me. Samhattan is like a blank white canvas, and anything like in a sort of not traditionally horror, but like a mean person would be in Samhattan, where Goblin's like a guy obsessed with like a hole in the wall, right? Or like a crack in the ceiling or something like that. And whereas Chaps is the city that I sort of relate to the most. Like it'd be the closest to, yeah, where I'm from or something. And like the family unit. And so Chaps feels a little bit more like, okay, not suburban, but we're telling us, we're coming from a place that like Goblin's fantastical. Samhattan is like sort of ruined industrial with a cemetery in the center of town. But Chaps feels a little bit more like home. And so I've written, I think, 3 books there now, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think this is the first one to come out. The other 2 just haven't come out yet.
Thank you so much. This was awesome. Check out Incidents Around the House. It's due out in July.
June 25th.
Even sooner and even better. Check it out on June 25th. And we are going to close this chapter of Turn the Page.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.